Welcome to the Caregiving Podcast. I'm Inga.
And I'm Julie.
And long story short, we have Caregiving. We are two momtrepreneurs who have built an in-home care business from the ground up, guided every step of the way by God's care and fueled by agape love. Almost 14 years later, we felt called to create this podcast as a resource for families with caregiving needs. Whether you care for a family member or are looking for advice on professional caregiving, we want this to be a platform to support you.
Each week, we will come to you with encouraging stories of families who have found the right balance for their loved ones, tips for how to care for them and you, and much more. We hope you continue to join us each week as we share in this exciting new journey together.
Hello, Sunshines, and hello, Julie. How are you today?
I am well, Inga. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Good.
There's no other way to be, is there?
Oh, my word. That's the best way to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That's all we're accepting at this point.
That's
in life.
right. That's right. That's right. Happy days.
Yes. Well, we have a really fun topic today, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Fun, tough,
Yeah.
interesting,
Yeah.
can be good, can be hard.
Yeah.
Maybe fun wasn't the right word. Okay, we have a topic.
Yes.
We have a topic today.
Depends on which side of it you're on, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me this. We'll
Yes.
just give a little teaser here. Let's talk about grandparents because we're going to be talking about grandparents
Yes.
pretty extensively.
Right.
Do your kids still have their grandparents?
Okay, let me see. So, yes, Grandma Cheryl is my mom.
Yep.
And then Grandpa Dan had passed about a year and a half ago, so no there. But we still have great grandma Patsy, and she's going to be 94 this year, so she's still around. And then on Mike's side, we still have Grandma Shirley around. And for quite some time, we actually had great grandma Irene.
Lots of women hanging in there.
Yeah, for sure. So we have that. And also I, on our first brochure that we ever made for Agape Home Care, at the bottom of it was a picture of me in a 5-generation picture.
Yes.
So I've had a lot of grandparents and that insight there. And I did know my grandma and Grandpa Jackson quite well for many, many years.
Right.
And so I was lucky to have them. Yeah.
Yeah. I grew up with grandparents all around, and my kids have had the pleasure of that as well.
No.
We have still with us Grandma Jean and Grandma Fisher that live right in our hometown, essentially. I mean, 20 minutes away.
Right.
So we get to see them a lot, and I actually just took a trip with them.
Oh my word, making memories.
Yes, it was really fun.
Cute.
It was a long trip, and they were good passengers and very well behaved. I didn't have to worry about them at all.
Were you driving Miss Daisy or more of a
I was driving the Ethels.
the Ethels?
Not to be confused with the Athels. That's what I teased them. But they were Ethels. They were good. They didn't give me any trouble.
Good traveling buddies.
Yes. And then we have Papa Conrad and Grandma Annette, and they live in Washington. They're about 5 hours away, maybe. And Papa Conrad comes to visit a lot, so we get to see him pretty regularly.
Right.
And then Kevin's parents, Mike and Betty, Papa Mike and Grandma Betty, they are back and forth between Montana and Tennessee. So we get to see them as much as we get to see them. And I'm thinking that we're going to have to make a trip to Tennessee this year to see them.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. They used to ride the train out, and with just how things are going, the train schedule is not as available to them. And basically it's booked out for a long time. So they were going to have difficulty getting here this summer. And then if they were able to get here, they were going to have difficulty getting home. So unfortunately, we'll have to go. It's unfortunate that they won't be here, but it's fortunate that we'll have the opportunity to go see them
A
instead.
good excuse to have to travel down.
Yes. So it all works out.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So we're lucky. My girls are lucky. Bailey, actually, when she was little, every Friday she would go to my grandma.
I remember that.
Grandma and Grandpa Fisher's, and they called it Bailey Day.
Cute.
So she got a lot of time with them.
Yep. Pretty awesome memories.
Indeed.
Cool.
And Grandma Jean, my brother and his kids live next door to Grandma Jean and Grandma Fisher, so they get a lot of interaction.
Yeah.
I think not every kid gets that.
No.
So those of us that do, we cherish it for sure. Yeah. All right, Julie. So let's move into our verse of the week. And you selected for us James chapter 1, verse 12.
Yep.
And it says, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him."
Yeah. Yep. Some of the part of the topic today is actually full of challenges and trials. So fear not, though, because God is always with you.
Yes.
And you will reap what you give.
It's true. I mean, you just have to remain steadfast under trial.
Yep.
Because it always works out.
Yep.
I've never had it not work out.
Yep.
Sometimes are harder than others, but it always works out. So listeners out there, if you have a verse that you would like to share with us, please send them in. Let's give Julie some things to pick through, and you can send those to thecaregivingpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes.
What did you bring for an uplifting story?
Oh, gosh. When I was thinking about grandparents, Grandma Effie had the most incredible garden. And when you first went around the house, you would see a big section of just pansies, just millions of pansies. And then around the back, there was the raspberries. And then the garden was huge. But then off on the other side of the yard, she took a whole hill, and there was a wishing well, and she made walking paths, and it was up on a hill. It was just beautiful. She just spent hours and hours and days up there, and she had this magical green thumb. And so I was thinking about her, like I said, when we were pulling all the information together for this. And so I found 6 tips to keep healthy houseplants when you don't have a green thumb.
Oh, I need that.
Because unfortunately, I did not get her green thumb, even though I'm trying. I'm trying very hard. But this gal that wrote this said, "If you're like me, you'll never be able to keep a plant for more than a few weeks, maybe a month." And she said, "I definitely inherited my mom's black thumb." So every houseplant I bought or got as a gift didn't last long. My old roommate joked that I could kill a cactus. But they do talk about the physical and psychological benefits of having indoor plants. So she was just like, why can't I do that? And then her friend offered a spider plant. I decided to try something I'd never done before. I commit to becoming a plant person. So she just writes about how she works so hard in terms of trying to save this spider plant. And she just said, start simply. And there are some plants that are way easier than others. So start with the hardy ones. And it may seem like a pain to do a little research, but can make the difference between your plant surviving and thriving. Look up how much sun the plants needs, how often to water it, what temperature it's best in, and if it requires any special care. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Watering has always been a weak point in my plant care. I kill a lot of indoor plants because I overwatered them. And so then also on the flip side, you can forget that they're there and not water them. Yes. So basically you've got to figure out a watering schedule.
Sure.
And let me see. Just consider your perspectives on everything. And I started viewing the time I spent caring for plants as a time I was also caring for myself. It got me to get up, take a break from my computer screen, and focus on another living thing. Oh, wow. I even started to listen to music and singing while I do it. Did you know that some studies indicate that singing to your plants can be good for them? I don't know if I sing it would do anybody any good at all. It releases carbon dioxide, which the plant needs, and then in turn uses it to produce fresh oxygen for us. And so this gal just documented how changing her perspective helped her then become more of a green thumb and appreciate things that were living in her house.
Oh, wow. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yes, I think, is a philodendron, is that one of the hardier plants? I seem to recall that name. I think that one over there on the table, that might be what that is. I'm not 100% sure, but
it is hardy then.
It is hard. It is hardy because basically over the course of this business, we've had different caregivers that are very in tune and have green thumbs, and they almost shame us.
They do. Julie, I need to take this home.
I'm going to take this home and fix it for you, and I'll bring it back. So it comes back for a couple years, and then somebody else takes it home and gives it a sprucing up. Yes. But that one has hung on.
Well, I do water it occasionally.
That is fantastic. I do not.
Yes.
This beautiful This is how I do plants.
The centerpiece?
The centerpiece. It just doesn't require a whole lot.
Oh, yeah.
But I do love it.
Yes, it is so pretty.
Yes. All right. Well, I saw this, it was a video or a reel, and it was on the Instagram account called Mindset Verse. And basically what it was, two men were sitting down having a discussion, and they were talking about their favorite quotes. And this one was actually in relation to overthinking. One of the gentlemen basically said that something that has helped him immeasurably, and it came from the book called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Mackesy, which I am now going to have to purchase this book. I'm just going to tell you. But essentially, this little tidbit of advice that comes from the book says that the boy and the horse are in the woods, and the boy says to the horse, "I can't see a way through." And the horse says, "Can you see the next step?" And the boy says, "Yeah." So the horse says, "Then just take that." And I thought, wow, like, how solid of advice is that?
Yeah.
Honestly, if
Right.
you can see the next step and just take the next step, that's all you can do, especially as we move into the topic that we're going to be discussing today.
Yeah.
It can be overwhelming. And in every situation, if you can just break it down a little bit, just take that next step. And then eventually, one after another, you'll make it to the finish line.
Oh, yeah.
I
That's
thought that
great.
that was really interesting, and it hit me pretty significantly, and that's why I wanted to share it today. So I will be purchasing The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, because it sounds like this book has a lot of very insightful information.
Love it.
Things that you can apply to life and that make sense.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's
Words
what I
from-
had today.
Words from a horse.
Words from a horse.
You
Always
bet.
listen to your horse. They know stuff.
They know stuff.
Is that the takeaway? That's
Yes,
what you got?
there you go.
Listen to your horse.
Listen to
'cause
your
it knows
horse.
stuff.
Problem is I don't have a horse.
I know. I
I
used
have
to have a horse.
cows.
Yeah.
My bunny doesn't talk a lot.
Yeah. All right. Well, okay. So the topic of the show today, Julie.
Okay, yeah, this is a very emotional, charged one about grandparents raising grandchildren, and we realize that there's a lot of different reasons that people end up in this situation. And as you and I were kind of preparing for this this discussion, just immediately I thought of three different people, families that I know that are raising their grandkids, and that was just that fast.
Yes.
Yeah, and so different reasons, different purpose, and but when it all boils down, what an incredible blessing for these grandkids to have their grandparents who would step up and just love them and take them on and do it again.
Oh, absolutely.
My word, what a
and
big
at the
job.
same time,
Woo.
I think that being on the other side of it, it can be a huge blessing to the grandparent who's raising the grandchild.
Yeah.
And like you said, we know of pretty easily 3 people that are in this particular situation. And it's kind of, for me, I know one family closer than, the others. And it's been such a joy to watch the relationship and see how much each side brings to the table in terms of positive interaction.
I actually just thought of somebody else.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually more common than
I think
people
so.
even think about nowadays because the blended family, those kinds of things, they're more of the norm now than just the nucleus. And boy, it just kind of pops into your head. Oh gosh, they do it too. You just take it for granted because they're always just that family unit.
Yeah. At some point in time, we'll have to have an episode on wives raising husbands.
Oh.
Because I think that's pretty,
Well,
not me. My husband is perfectly delightful.
No, I'll be the guest speaker for that one.
Nice. And she comes with how many years of experience? Oh, that's funny. So basically, there can be a lot of challenges that can come along with this. Grandparents raising grandchildren. And you had pulled together, it's actually a help guide. And it is literally titled Grandparents Raising Grandchildren.
Yeah.
So talk me through some of this.
Okay, so basically, as grandparents, we usually have the benefit of interacting with our grandkids on a level that is once removed from the day-to-day responsibilities. But then for many of them, that's like a weekend get-together, an evening of babysitting, an afternoon play date, summer vacation, holidays, and that kind of thing. But sometimes life circumstances change. And because there might be a divorce, there might be a death in the family, a change in the parents' work or financial status that all of a sudden leaves them with the inability to be there all the time. And we're also in an era of significant mental health issues. And you always have to stop and wonder how much is involved in that. So also known as kinship care, which is interesting. I hadn't heard about it put that way. A growing number of grandparents are now taking on the parenting role for their grandchildren, thus foregoing the traditional grandparent role. This often means giving up your leisure time, the option of travel, and many other aspects of your independence. Instead, you once again take responsibility for the day-to-day, which is the home schedules, the meals, the homework, the play dates, sports, just raising
All
them.
of the things.
Busy kids. Yeah, and if it was tragic circumstances, then there's also, besides the role of the parent, also the emotional that the kids have with them as they make a transition into this kind of a relationship. Yeah, so they say, though, raising your grandchildren while challenging can be incredibly rewarding. And so it just depends on even the age that you get those kiddos. You know, I know of somebody that one day her son came to the house, and he brought his 3 kids, and they ranged from infant to, you know, I think 6 years old, and just left them.
Oh, wow.
And there hadn't been any pre-warning or anything. And she and her husband had just thought about retiring.
Oh, wow.
And they just all of a sudden had a lot going on. As I was talking to the husband one day, it was very interesting because this was his stepson. And so I think he had some resentment. And so besides the kiddos, then there's the grandma-grandpa issues,
Sure.
depending on what was brought to the table.
Yeah.
And now that they're here, they're not traveling like they thought they would, but they have had to just change their whole mindset and say, we're going to love this, we're going to enjoy this, because otherwise you wouldn't be successful at it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and I would imagine that depending on the circumstances that lead up to that relationship being established, I would imagine that there are different feelings around it.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
basically someone dies and then you end up taking in the kids versus someone just shows up one day. I mean, you're going to love them regardless, but
Right.
there will be different feelings that accompany different
oh,
emotions
and
over it.
the bottom line is this is never, ever the kids' fault. It really isn't. It's
Yeah.
just a set of whatever circumstances that life brings. Yep. So we've got to remember, what are we going to do for the kids? How are we going to keep them together? How are we going to make sure that they then grow into, productive and successful adults?
Right. Well, and if you think about not only that emotional side of it that you're taking care of and the physical side of it, there's going to be circumstances that are going to, there's probably legal things that are going to come into it, a whole lot of responsibility that's going to take place more than just, can I get them fed and get them to school every single day?
Oh, my word. So when you first have something like this happen, one of the things that you have to be so aware of is just acknowledging your feelings and validating those, because there's a lot.
Yes. Stress and worry.
Oh, yeah.
If you've been used to the occasional visit from a grandchild, being back in the saddle full time can definitely feel stressful and overwhelming. You may worry about how you'll handle the additional responsibilities and what will happen to the grandkids if something happens to you.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't thought about that.
I know.
Because if you're up there in years, what happens? Yeah.
Well,
and then who then takes care of them?
Right.
If,
Yeah.
Oh, my word.
There's a lot to think about.
Oh, so many tears. Yeah.
Yes.
Anger or resentment. That's kind of how I brought up that gentleman. You may feel anger or resentment towards the grandchildren's parents for leaving you with the responsibility of caring for their child.
Right. Guilt. I mean, depending on the circumstances, you might feel a sense of guilt or responsibility for your own child. What happened? Do you start second guessing? Do you start regretting decisions that you made, wondering if you did it right the first time around? So I'm sure that there's a lot of feeling that goes into that.
Yeah. Yeah. Grief. There are many losses that come with taking in your grandkids, including the loss of your independence and the easier role of just grandparent. I remember when Dad was holding one of my babies and she was just cooing and happy, and all of a sudden she just ripped one and just filled her pants. And Dad says, he goes, "This is why being a grandpa is so great. Here's your kid."
You get to give them back.
Clean them up, then give her back.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, so funny.
Yeah. So basically, though, when you are then put into that primary caregiver position, you can't give that baby back because you're the one that has to clean it up.
Yep. And when you start to feel overwhelmed, just remember that while you may not have the energy that you did when you were younger, something you do have is wisdom that only comes with experience.
That's a good one.
Yes, for sure. And that's an advantage that can make a huge, huge difference in a grandchild's life, I think.
Yeah.
Unlike first-time parents, you've done it before, learned from your mistakes, and so don't ever underestimate what you bring to the table and what you have to offer.
Oh boy, when they come out, they don't also then pop out a book that says this is how you raise a kid, right?
Before I had Bailey, my biggest fear was, how am I going to know if she's too warm or too cold?
Oh, yeah.
Literal fear as I'm pregnant with her. I'm not going to know how many blankets to put on her or not put on her, which now they probably say don't put a blanket at all because they'll smother themselves. But they've made new things. But yeah, that was my reoccurring nightmare fear. Strange.
Isn't that funny? We look back. Yeah, I look back at raising my own children, and I just think, you know what? You have to give yourself grace because I really, truly did the best I could with what I knew at the time.
Yep.
And you have to just go with that. And then if you learn something different later down the road, wish I would have known that.
It's interesting because my personality is, I'm a perfectionist, if you didn't know that. So I have had to make a lot of peace with doing the best you can with what you have, whether it's, whether it's money, whether it's things, whether it's information.
Yeah.
Just you have to do the best you can with what you have at the moment. And you have to be at peace with that.
Yeah.
Everything is not always going to be perfect.
Oh boy. Yeah, for sure. So take care of yourself. You probably aren't expecting to be raising kids again at this stage of your life, but at times the physical, emotional, and financial demands may seem overwhelming. That's why it's vitally important that you take care of yourself and get the support you need.
Yeah. A healthy you means healthy grandchildren.
Yeah.
Right. So if you don't take care of your health, you're not going to be able to take care of your grandchildren either. So you have to make it a priority. And it's things that we talk about all the time: eating nutritious meals, exercising. I roll. I don't think that counts as an exercise.
Oh, dang it.
No, I've got to do it. I keep saying.
Yeah.
49 or so episodes, 48 something, and I still keep promising I'm going to exercise.
Speaking of exercise, it was very, very cute. This family that I'm kind of referencing to is actually in our neighborhood, our area where we live. And as we were driving the backcountry road, I saw the grandma, with walking the dog, and the little guy must have been about 4 or so. So I slowed way down because I don't like to have any dust on the county road, and just rolled down my window and just waved, and I go, hello. And he's like, hello. And you just knew that he was healthy and happy and so friendly. And fun. I was like, one of the thoughts that I thought about her is, oh my gosh, she's doing such a good job. Look at how happy he is. Yes. It was very sweet.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then I was like, as I was driving off, going, oh my word, I don't think I could do it. But I think once you find yourself in that position, you do what you have to do.
And you do what you have to do.
Because I think about that often. I now that I'm an empty nester, I really, really enjoy it. And so I feel terribly at times going, geez, am I selfish? And it's just like, well, here we are.
Right.
And I'm in a different situation.
I think we always just adapt to where we are.
You bet.
And as circumstances change, we make the best of it. And your personality is just, you're going to be happy wherever you are, whatever the circumstances.
Yeah. And then if I ended up with grandkids back at the house, then, you would just have to say, okay, now we're going to figure this out. We have to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Don't forget to get adequate sleep. That is very important.
Oh boy. For everybody that's around you.
Yep.
Okay. Support makes all the difference. Find someone you can talk to about what you're going through. For every topic in the world, Facebook has a group, and there's support groups out there, your church, all of that. Right. And it is more and more common.
It's interesting because one of the families that we've gotten very, very close with, where it's grandparents raising a granddaughter, I think about that support factor. And this particular family, they have fallen in love with showing lambs. No. And so the village that's been created around this, and it's intergenerational. I mean, we've got kids, we've got parents, we've got grandparents, and everybody's working together. And that's kind of like the support group. You come together, you shear lambs. You come together, you go to shows, you get them prepped and ready to go into the ring. And I think that support system has been just phenomenal because everybody is participating in it and everybody has a piece of ownership in the outcome. And it's been tremendous for me. I have loved being a part of it.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Because also then, even if you take that little gal and have a sleepover with her, you know, you didn't know it, but you gave grandma and grandpa a rest.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah. You know, and so that's just cool. Yeah. Look for support groups like we were talking. Reach out to your community and connect with parents with children.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So something that also must be taken into consideration in these circumstances is that it's not just the grandparents that are going to be feeling or having mixed emotions, right? The grandkids are they're gonna have mixed feelings too. So we have to always make sure that we're recognizing that and how the situation impacts them.
Oh my word, just moving to a new house, not having your mom and dad there and not really understanding why. You know, it just depends. Well, no, every age, there's going to be a different way that they perceive what happened. And you've got to figure that out. How are you going to talk to them about it? Yeah. And so is there that wish to return? Is there not that wish to return?
And understand that they may act out in different ways and they may have behaviors because they're trying to process what's happening just as much as anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And where it gets sticky is where with grandparents, you're usually 99.9% of the time so thrilled to get to see them because it's a special day. And now you're with them all the time. You get a different relationship. Yeah.
But remember that no matter what's going on, they need the comfort and they need the support.
Oh, yes, so much. And also, just like we do with everybody in our lives, we usually react different and harder and meaner to the people that we love the most because that's our safe spot.
Yep.
And we can get away with it because you can't just kick me to the curb, Inga, when I'm being a brat.
Right. Same. I think there are a lot of times in situations where when the grandkids first arrive, they might be on, it's like the honeymoon period, right? Or when you hire a new employee or something, it's always usually pretty rosy in the beginning. And then things can start to get a little out of hand, but just be prepared for it and know and love each other, have safe spaces.
Yep. Focus on creating a stable environment. And so what does that mean? You know, are they going to get their own bedroom? Is that going to be a place where they can go and it's comfortable and it's warm and it's inviting to them and makes them feel safe and invited?
Yeah. One thing that, and this isn't a grandchild, but with my Sammy girl, when Kevin and I were raising the girls and Sam was still kind of back and forth between her mom's house and our house, we decided early on that the girls would be parented exactly the same and we would have the same rules, the same structure, the same routines, the same responsibilities. And that can be a risk because at times maybe a child is going to say, I don't want all that structure and that bossing and whatever. I'm going to go over here where I can do things however I want to. But fortunately for Sam, she took a lot of comfort in that routine and knowing the stability that she had there. And so it was good, but it makes a huge difference, I think, for kids to have those routines.
Yep. We want to encourage them to give their input and that they're being listened to. Yep. And so that's vital.
Yep. Setting clear, age appropriate house rules and enforcing them. You know, it's hard. It's hard to always have to be on top of that stuff, but you just have to make sure if you set a rule, set a boundary, you enforce it.
Yes, I in my life, I married a guy with 3 kids, so it wasn't a grandparent situation, but yet it was blended family.
Sure.
And at one point, one of our girls wanted to come and live with us for a bit of time, and she was older. So she had some very set patterns and behaviors, and I actually set up a behavior contract. Yeah. And we sat down and we talked about it and said, you've got 2 very impressionable little girls watching you and loving you and thinking you are it. So you better live up to that.
Yep. And I think you have to establish.
That's what we had to do because of the age. you wouldn't do that with a 2-year-old.
Sure, sure.
But when a teenager moves in, and there's a lot more independence, you have to make sure that that definition of independence is the same.
Yes. They do say to make sure that your grandchild has a private space.
Right.
Somewhere they can, be by themselves.
Yeah. And then give them your time and attention.
Like all of us.
Yes.
We just need time and attention.
We all need it.
And we'll thrive.
Yes.
Something that's of utmost importance is to always encourage open and honest communication. You want to plan regular times when you sit and talk to each other, free from the distractions, right? Free from the TV, phones, games, other distractions. Just in my family, that's usually dinner time.
Yeah.
Sit around and talk about the day and things that are upcoming, but definitely needs to happen.
Oh, they say that people sitting down, families sitting down for dinner nowadays is very rare because there's so much going on. But we love doing that.
Yeah, even in the office.
Yeah, getting together and just visiting. But encourage your grandchildren and your children to talk about their feelings, both good and bad, because they've got to know that they can speak and be heard.
I think we get into situations where we don't want to hear about the bad, so we only encourage the talk about the good, and then not even really realizing that we're doing it. We don't create a space for people to be able to talk about the bad stuff.
Yeah.
So it's important to think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in doing that and having those conversations, you're going to be able to help them identify their emotions.
Yep.
Be able to work through them.
And even watching their patterns, watch how they play, how they interact with other people. It will kind of tell you how they are emotionally.
Yeah, I think they communicate a lot in the way that they play.
Right. And then the other thing to do is just admit when you don't know, because there's going to be stuff come up that you don't know how to deal with.
Right.
Raising your kids and then raising your grandkids 20 plus years later. There could be
There's going to be a lot you don't know about what's going on. You're going to learn a lot from your grandkids, probably.
Well, actually, when it comes to modern technology, I usually wait for them to put things together for me.
Yeah. So they talk about, how much should you tell them? You don't want to tell the child too much, but you also don't want to tell them too little or nothing at all.
Yeah.
And never twist, they need to have good information.
Right.
So don't manipulate it. Don't twist it around. Don't manipulate the facts and lie to kids. Honesty is always best policy.
Oh, and they're always going to have that connection with their parent.
Yes.
And so there's so many really hard emotions that you have to deal with.
Yeah. And it can be hard depending on what the circumstances are to even try to still maintain some type of a relationship.
Right.
One of the things I always told my Sammy girl was, as she was going into situations, is, you have to, first of all, you have to identify what do you want from the situation. And then second, you have to identify what are you willing to live with? Because so many times, you aren't going to really get what you really want. So you need to know, okay, if I'm not going to reach this, what can I live with so that I'm not going to be devastated over the situation?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So setting those realistic expectations.
Yeah. Now, when you think about reasons that your kids can no longer have their babies with them, it comes down to, mental health, financial, work schedules, but it can get serious too. It's significant drug and alcohol addictions, and so that's where you just have to figure out where your grandchild is in their ages and how much can they handle.
Yeah. And I think depending on the situation and, evaluating what is going to be healthy for the child, in terms of how much interaction they're going to have with the parent that they're no longer with. You don't ever want to put your grandchild in the middle of a situation.
Right.
You always want to cooperate and communicate to the best of your ability with the grandchild's parent. If you can, if it's safe, if it's healthy, you want to make visits a part of the grandchild's routine. And here's the thing, understand this child came from this parent.
Right.
They're a part of this parent. So if you are unkind in the way that you speak about the parent, then does that child feel a sense of being less, or that you don't like them for the same reasons because they come from the parent? So you got to be really, really sensitive to that and monitor and pay attention to those feelings. And then also, again, kind of talking what I was saying about Sammy and establishing, what do you want? What can you live with? teach them how to deal with disappointment, because if you're in this situation, something catastrophic has happened and there is going to be disappointment. So you got to learn how to figure that out and work through it.
And that can be a lifelong thing that child holds
Absolutely.
forever.
Absolutely.
So that's tough. And so you got to try to be really in tune to that. But the other thing is loyalty is a big word.
Oh, yeah.
And they'll be loyal to their mom and dad always, which they should be.
Sure.
But in a healthy sense.
Right. Because when it becomes unhealthy and the child is no longer safe for whatever reason, then you have to rethink that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard. I'm sure that, kids aren't going to, it's just hard to understand. It's hard to process. It's hard to input. And I always told Sam that, being a parent, it's a job. I mean, it is a job, and not everybody is great at it. Right. So we just have to work with what we have. And again, there are so many different circumstances, and maybe someone had a struggle early on in their life and it led to a situation where grandkids are now with grandparents. And maybe all of that is worked out and resolved at this point, and they got through it, but the grandchild's just more stable where they are. And so, I mean, I think the hope is always that whatever caused the situation can be remedied to the best of the ability of all involved, and that it becomes a healthy relationship again.
Oh, and what a blessing that these kiddos have their grandparents to be able to go to. Pretty amazing, special people.
Yeah.
Wow.
I want to talk a little bit about, there's an article that you had actually pulled up, and it's Grand Family's Guide for Grandparents Raising Grandchildren. So just, we've talked quite a bit, but I think there are some legal things that probably we should address.
Oh, yeah.
And when you get started, it's going to be overwhelming, but you need to remember there are things that you're going to need. So talking about some of the documents, you would need a birth certificate for the child. If there's been a death in if the parents have died, you're going to want to get a hold of a death certificate. If there's a divorce or, any parenting plans or things like that, you're going to want to have copies of those so that and can move forward in legal situations if need be. You definitely want to have Social Security cards, at minimum the number, but you should have the card. You need to be able to get medical and dental records, power of attorney, custody, guardianship, adoption, other legal papers in that regard, consent forms signed by the parents for medical care and education. You would want to get, if you can, school papers, report cards, evaluations, registrations, those types of things. Proof of the grandchild's income and assets, if there are any, if there's a trust, if there was a death, or if there's any, maybe disability payment, anything like that. Then your own income and assets, because if you do end up having to apply for benefits, you'll need to have that information. If it's a situation where there's a citizenship, you will need to have those papers, and then any military papers from parents. I'm sure there are other things that these are just
that's
kind
quite
of, these
the list.
are just kind of.
I would have never thought about this kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But even when you first get the child in your home, you have to think about their basic needs. Then think about all of that paperwork, my word. But, where are they going to sleep? Do they have medications do they take? Food, clothing, just getting back and forth from school. So do you need a stroller? Do you need a car seat? Oh, my word. It's a huge
It's
project.
a very big undertaking.
Oh, wow.
For sure.
Wow.
Yeah. It's important to keep some phone numbers on hand, emergency numbers, any support groups or resources, family members or friends, school, childcare, preschool, any of those types of things, doctors, dentists, counselors, social workers, therapists, if you're working with any of those, have some babysitters lined up, and maybe after school, before after school programs, youth activities.
So I have a question.
Sure.
And basically, if you have a scenario like this, like with your teachers and people that they're around most, wouldn't you just want to be bluntly honest with them, and so that they're aware that there's a reason that their kiddo might be acting out at school, and say to the teacher, hey, this is a new thing.
Yes.
They moved in with us in June. It's now August. There's some transition going on. This is a scenario. And then there's also safety, because what if the parent isn't supposed to pick up the child from school? Oh, my word. I just haven't, the more we talk about this, the more it just gets bigger and bigger.
We actually have an employee that used to work here, has since moved. She had an adopted child, was living, I believe, in the state of Utah, and the biological mom came and picked up the child, and she was missing. They did find her, and she was fine. But at some point, the biological mom picked her up, wasn't supposed to, and they were gone for a significant amount of time.
Wow. Yep. And then didn't she end up with a second child and actually adopted? Not adopted. What is it when the grandparent takes on that baby?
I'm not sure. I think we're talking about two different people.
Are we?
I think we are.
Okay, so she did end up with two.
Yeah. No, not the one I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
But
wow. Yeah. So see how quickly there's so many different scenarios
Yes.
of legalities and just trying to love on somebody. And it's just not just that easy. You have to really think about all of these steps.
Yeah. Something that they say about, as you're working through these things and talking to doctors' offices or talking to attorneys or different things, it's really good to keep a binder to keep track of everything. And anything in relation to the situation, you want to make sure you write the date, the name of the person that you interacted, title, relationship to the grandchild, that person's contact information, and maybe just some notes about what it is that you had spoken about, just so you have a nice record to keep track of and reference back to if need be.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. That's a tough topic.
That is a tough topic.
Very emotional.
Yeah, I said fun in the beginning. I think I was thinking about all of the things that we do with sheep that are fun with our friends that maybe that's what it was.
Yes.
I wasn't thinking you nailed it when you said emotionally charged. I think that was more accurate.
Oh.
Yes. Oh man. So the grandparent saying, I love this. God couldn't be everywhere, so he made grandparents.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, I thought that one was perfect for the day to summarize what we've just talked about.
Yes. Well, thank you, listeners, if you hung in there through this emotionally charged episode. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please go do that. You can do that on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. Please leave us a review, share us with your friends. Go and join our Apaga Care and Share Facebook group, and join in the discussion. We'd love to hear from you.
Would love to hear from you.
I think that's it. So peace out, Girl Scouts.
Have a wonderful day.